What's up, everybody? Average Sniper here. Sit back, relax. Let's get started. Oh, and don't forget to smack that like button. I want to talk about what I think is the biggest mistake PUBG ever made and why people no longer even know what PUBG is. And of course, I'm talking about current gamers, people. I mean, PUBG is almost 10 years old. So there's people that literally have no idea what PUBG is. There's people that think PUBG is something that copied Fortnite when it was the other way around. And I think one of the reasons that PUBG fell off so much, I mean, it's still popular, but it did fall off, is because of one simple thing. And this occurred to me the other day. And I've always known this, but it occurred to me how important this was. It's the loot. I think this is one of the most overlooked things in all of PUBG regarding PC and console. How the game feels completely different now simply because loot is so much easier to find. And whether you've been playing since early access or you joined more recently, this change has impacted every single match you play, even if you don't know it. Back in early access, PUBG was a gritty, scrappy, unpredictable battle royale. When you dropped into Erangel or Miramar, there's always this sense of uncertainty because you genuinely had no idea what loot you were going to find. You could loot an entire town and still walk out with a shotgun and a pistol, maybe a level 1 vest if you were lucky. Finding an assault rifle felt like winning the lottery, seriously. And finding a sniper rifle, that was like discovering buried treasure. The scarcity of loot completely defined the pacing and tension of PUBG's early experience. It forced players to adapt on the fly. You didn't build a loadout. You made do with whatever the game decided to give you. And that shaped not only how people played, but how entire lobbies played. The game felt slower, more tactical, and more desperate. Every bullet mattered, every engagement felt like a risk. And if you heard a Car 98 go off across the map, it actually meant something because the odds of someone finding one were so low. Fast forward to today, all right? And PUBG has become a completely different environment. Loot is everywhere. You can drop almost anywhere, loot for 2 or 3 minutes, and walk out with a full loadout. Not the loadout the game forced on you. You're not adapting to scarcity anymore. You're selecting weapons the same way you would in a traditional respawn shooter. You want an M4? You'll find one. You want a DMR? There's one right around the corner. You want a bolt action? You usually have one before the first circle even closes. And this shift from scarcity to abundance has had massive, massive effects on the gameplay. First off, early fights feel totally different. In early access, the first 3 minutes were absolute chaos. And I would say this goes beyond early access because I think it wasn't until a couple years where they finally said, we're just going to put good loot everywhere, even in shacks. People in the first few minutes, people punched each other, fought with pistols, scrambled over the one shotgun in a building. Those moments created hilarious stories and unpredictable outcomes. But today, the majority of early fights are M4 versus M4 or AK versus M4 or whatever someone's preferred weapon is. Instead of chaos, you get consistency. And while consistency is good for competitive play, it takes away from the raw, gritty charm that PUBG originally had. Secondly, mid-game engagements have changed dramatically. Because loot is so abundant, almost everyone is running level 2 or 3 gear, fully kitted rifles, and strong secondary weapons. There's no real sense of advantage because almost everyone is equally equipped. Back in the early days, spotting someone with a suppressor or a level 3 helm was a big deal. It meant that player had won the loot lottery. Today, that kind of gear is just commonplace. And when everyone has everything, the game becomes more predictable. Third, the end game has shifted from a battle of survival and improvisation into a battle of mechanical skill and positioning. In early PUBG, the final circles often featured players using mismatched gear, weird weapons, or whatever they picked up along the way. That was my first chicken dinner. A frickin' micro Uzi and an M16. Sometimes you'd see someone with a shotgun versus someone with a single fire AK. It was chaotic and imperfect, but that imperfection created tension. Now, endgames almost always feature players with identical or near identical setups, 2 kitted ARs, plenty of meds, boosts, a million grenades, everything you'd want for the perfect loadout. It's consistent, but it's also far less unique. Fourth, the identity of the game has shifted. PUBG used to be a scavenger first looter shooter. The looting phase mattered almost as much as the combat. You had to think about where you landed, how you rotated, what buildings gave you the best chance at surviving the early game, and how to approach fights when you were at a disadvantage. But when loot is this easy to find, the scavenging aspect doesn't matter anymore. Everyone knows they'll get what they need, so the game only starts once players are geared up. The survival element has been replaced by pure gunplay. Fifth, and this is important, the tension of the game has changed. Early access PUBG had a constant sense of danger because you were never fully prepared. You always felt one step behind. Every fight felt like a gamble. But in modern PUBG, players enter fights with full confidence because they almost always have the weapons and attachments they want. When you remove scarcity, you remove a layer of anxiety that made PUBG feel raw and intense. Sorry to keep rambling, but this is really, I'm passionate about this. And finally, all right, this shift has changed how players mentally approach PUBG. Today, most players treat it like a shooter where they build their preferred loadout every single match. They land somewhere familiar, they pick up the same weapons, they attach the same attachments, and they essentially repeat the same routine. But in the early days, your strategy had to be flexible. If you found a shotgun, you played one way. If you found a VSS, you played another. If you somehow found a sniper rifle, your entire game plan changed. Loot used to shape the match. Loot used to define your role, and loot used to decide how you played the game. Now loot is just a checklist you complete before you start fighting. So the question becomes, has PUBG improved or has it lost something important? Like, there's no denying that easier loot has made the game more accessible and consistent, more friendly to new players. But when players can reliably get the weapons they want, the game becomes more about aim, movement, and decision making. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time, a huge part of PUBG's original identity has been smoothed out and completely deleted. The unpredictability, the forced adaptation, the moments where your entire strategy changed based on one lucky gun that you found in a closet somewhere. The feeling of earning a good weapon instead of simply expecting one. Those elements created a kind of storytelling that modern PUBG just doesn't replicate. PUBG today is faster, cleaner, and more polished, but PUBG in early access was gritty, desperate, and full of personality. The scarcity of loot didn't just slow the game down, it gave the game soul. It made every decision feel important. It made every bullet count. And for many players, that feeling is what made PUBG unforgettable. So the game has evolved in many positive ways, and it's worth recognizing how something as simple as loot density has reshaped the entire experience. Whether you think that change is good or bad, it's a reminder that PUBG isn't just defined by its maps or weapons or updates. It's defined how players interact with the world and with one another. And when the world gives you everything, you lose that sense of struggle that once made PUBG feel like the ultimate fight for survival. That's all I had to say, guys. I really think that PUBG could have held on to a lot more of its core players if it hadn't changed the loot. Changing the loot seems to have made it so much more of a different experience. It is no longer welcoming to new players who want to try and survive with what they find. You really have to know the meta guns, which guns to get, which guns to use, and they're all going to be in one room for you. So, yeah. I thought about that the other day. I was like, man, I got to make a video about that because it just completely blew my mind when I thought about how much just having abundant loot made such a huge difference. And I think that there'd be a lot more players if PUBG stuck to its core nitty-gritty lottery experience of, will you be able to get good stuff, or are you going to get to the end with no helmet, a level 1 vest, a micro Uzi, and a pistol with 2 bullets? Thanks for watching, everybody. Let me know your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to smack that like button, and I'll see you on the next video or the next live stream. Later.